Hi, I'm Mash Ponigala, brand strategist at Spellbrand. In this ongoing series on brand archetypes, today's video we talk about the creator. So in the previous video, which was the first in terms of the archetypes themselves, I talked about the ruler and how the ruler is all about power management. It's a show of power. It's about organization. It's about solving problems through the might of the brand, of course, for the target audience. Now, the creator, on the other hand, is almost, I would say, dimensionally different from the ruler. There is a show of power, but it comes from a different kind of perspective as opposed to the ruler. The creator's main priority is to express their creativity. So compared to the ruler, they're quite laid back. They love novelty and they love to create new combinations. So the creator is typically clever, self-sufficient, and they don't really like any sort of imposed kind of conformity. Now, if you look at the kind of creator brands, something like Apple comes to mind. It's a cliched example, but there are many others. And in this video, we're going to talk about others and not Apple. Now, creator brands are visionaries, right? They seem to exist to innovate. They're non-conformist to the extreme and always strive to come across as authentic. These brands wear their desire on their sleeve. Creator brands are often in the technology, marketing, or design spaces. But of course, this is not always the case. They exist to empower creative consumers. Now, as I said, Apple is a great example, but we will look at some others. So the key here is that creative brands try and empower their audience. Which means that, of course, when you're looking at brand archetypes, you're also looking at the user archetype or the target audience archetype. Now, if the target audience are creative types, that means they in their own lives, they're always looking for creativity. They are turned on by creativity, and in fact, their life path, and that could be in business, that could be in their careers, they're always aligning with creativity. They are themselves creative, the places they work in tend to be creative, and so on. So to align with such a target audience as a brand, you got to be a creator archetype. Now, not necessarily all the time. Sometimes you could if your audience is the creative or creator kind of archetype, it doesn't necessarily always mean that you got to be the same. You could be something else. That depends on the psychographics of your target audience. So, as I said in my previous video and also in the first video in this series where I gave an introduction about brand archetypes, the important thing to remember is that there are two faces to brand archetypes. One is the target audience, your customers, your potential customers, that archetype, the archetype that they are. And then there is the brand archetype, which may align with your target audience by being the same. So if they are a creator, you also tend to be, your brand also tends to be a creator archetype. Or if they're a ruler, you tend to be a ruler archetype. Or if required, you could be something else. You could be something else, for example, such as a sage or a jester. So the confusion here, and this is where most businesses struggle, is deciding or trying to figure out what archetype their brand should be based on the archetype of their audience. And there is no rule of thumb. It depends on your unique situation. The general guideline is that if your audience is a certain archetype, then aligning your brand to be that archetype usually works, but not all the time. So just keep that in mind as we go through this series of videos. I know I'm repeating this, but I might just mention it in every video when I talk about the other archetypes, but I don't want to really go into too detailed discussion of that because it could end up being repetitive. For the creator, the brand promise should be originality. So when we say the brand promise, it's nothing but what we promise to deliver to the audience. And this could be through our services, through our products, but also through general messaging. So originality is the name of the game for the creator brand archetype. And the goal is to innovate. Innovation is about finding solutions to problems that are different from the status quo, from things that have already been done or are being done at the moment. Now, innovation is again, very misunderstood concept when it comes to businesses and branding. Of course, there is this innovation in its truest sense, which if you're a product maker, then it's pretty straightforward, right? So you have a product, you innovate, you make it better for your audience, not for the sake of just being better, which is another pitfall that a lot of brands out there go through. And they sort of seek out and run after innovation just for the sake of innovation. So this year our product has X number of features, next year it has to have better features, so on and so forth. Now that kind of process works to a certain stage where your target audience, your customers are happy with these new features that come out every year or periodically. But then you reach a peak and then it starts plateauing, and after that it actually declines, because innovation should match and align with your target audience's needs and expectations, right? Of course there is this thing which is contrary to what I just said, where Steve Jobs, for example, said that the target audience never know what they want, and it's up to you to sort of innovate and then provide them with solutions that they never knew that they wanted in the first place, or that they needed in the first place. Now that might work for someone like Steve Jobs and for Apple, but I'm assuming that I'm addressing small business owners on this video, and small to medium, and of course even some of the bigger companies can be considered as medium. But in situations like that, innovation is not really name of the game. Innovation should be done strategically. So the creator brand type especially needs to innovate, not just in terms of innovation for self, but innovation for their target audience. So the first is, of course, when you have the products and you innovate them, product or services. The other is innovating the whole kind of market segment, right? And you do this not just through product innovation, but also in the way you deliver your products or your services, or in the way you deliver your customer service, in the way you have your marketing campaigns, your messages. So innovation has to permeate in everything that you do, in everything that your brand does. That is much more sustainable and much more beneficial for a small business brand. And the strategy is to develop and refine artistic expression. And when I say artistic expression here, I don't necessarily mean the visuals themselves, but this is more about the kind of look and feel, not just from visual, but also from the tone, from what you say and things like that, right? Now the personality to project: the artisan, the innovator, or the inventor. Now the ideal customer for the creator brand is that are people, they actually shun traditional advertising, right? So they are put off by the usual kind of regular traditional advertising. They enjoy novel experiences, right? These customers are very loyal to a creative brand, and Apple did capitalize on that. Initially, when Apple was going through that phase where they almost went bankrupt, and then of course they brought back Steve Jobs, and he then started innovation in the true sense. The initial kind of products, the Lisa and then the Mac, and all those, including up to iPod and then the iPhone, it was always about the creator user type, right? So they were targeting people who appreciated innovation, who appreciated aesthetics, and in fact, predominantly they were creators themselves in the true sense. They were, designers and publishers and so on and so forth. But now, of course, it's not just designers and publishers and the creatives, but also generally people who appreciate this kind of design aesthetic, the artistic kind of aesthetic. And so in terms of your target audience, just make sure that they fall into these categories, that they appreciate non-traditional kind of advertising and so on and so forth. And that way, you are then sure that you can align your own campaigns towards that. The color can be yellow, and of course, that's what we are. Our color is yellow. It's a combination of archetypes, and of course, we are a creator archetype, and therefore we have yellow, but not just that. We have some other strategic kind of requirements, and I'll talk about that maybe in another video. Now, one of the weaknesses of a creator could be that they can be seen as being aloof, out of touch, or unrefined. And the potential solutions to that is if you have a kind of higher end services or products, then consider a lower cost, right? A lower cost or lower price product, and see if that sort of balances the equation. Or you could consider a high-end, polished, and then refined version of your existing product if it's lower cost, right? So use social media to tactfully let people know that you're in touch with current events and societal issues, but of course, avoid politics. Now, suggested color palette for the creator type is yellow with shades. So you're going from yellow, and then you're going to all the way to brown or chocolate brown, and that actually complements the yellow or different kinds of yellow. You got mustard here and so on. In terms of visual imagery, so you got creativity, you've got yellow, of course, but you've got also whimsical. Look at the pug with the cap, right, with the hat. You also got creativity going, artisan, artistic, and so on. Something that is different, something that moves out of the usual trend. As I said, Apple is such a great example for a creator brand archetype, but there's others that we can talk about, and that way you will get a more rounded, a different kind of viewpoint of what a creator brand archetype is. And so what I will do is I'll show you advertisements on YouTube for each archetype, and I'll talk about that brand, but there'll be no sound because I'm not sure, but I think YouTube will flag this video if I play other advertisements on my channel. So let's see what happens. I'll just it'll be a silent video, and I'll just talk about it, right? All right, the first one is Honda, and this Honda advertisement is very interesting. Now, Honda has long been known for its out-of-box thinking, right? It enjoys a strong reputation for its high-quality engines and cars. But you know what? It began as an innovator in the motorbike space. And their advertising, of course, plays off of their innovative history, and their fans are, of course, very loyal. Now, this brand is well known for its innovative marketing, as you can see in this commercial, in this advertisement. It's that they're showing how they came from the bike to the car and then the future, and it's very simple. It's stop animation, and right, they're talking about getting rid of eco-friendly oil. Became water, and innovation all the way through. Very creative, very interesting ad. Okay, let's stop there. I will leave a link to this video, and you can then watch this yourself, during your leisure. The next brand that I want to talk about is Lego. Now, we all know Lego. What is really important to them, which is, of course, the fun, the joy, the uniqueness, the creativity. So they're going back to creativity. They sort of had this period where commercialization took over, and they were making so much money, and they had this pressure to be innovative just for the sake of it. But that started backfiring a little bit because they lost touch with who they really were. And this is very important. Being in touch with who you are as a brand is very critical. Even if you're a tiny little brand, if you're just one person, right? Even then, it is very critical that you understand who you are, what your essence is, right? What your brand core is, what your core values are, and always stick to that. Even if things seem to be going downhill, if there's a recession, right? If you're losing sales, or if your revenue has tanked, even in those dire moments, you got to always look at your core values and say, come what may, this is what we are as a brand, and this is what we're going to do, right? That's why having a brand strategy, having a positioning strategy is always important. Having a vision, mission, these are critical. And if you don't have these, now is the time. Step back and work on those. Work on your vision, work on your mission, work on your core values, work on your brand strategy, your positioning strategy, your target audience, and of course, your target audience archetypes and your own brand archetype. And that is why I'm doing these series of videos. They're all steps in becoming the best brand you possibly can. They're all steps in taking your brand from going from a red ocean to a blue ocean. And of course, Lego is a blue ocean. I mean, come on. It has no competition. Yes, of course, it has competition, but not really competition, right? They are in their own blue ocean. So think about that. Think about that and take the time to do the right things for your brand. The final example I want to give is Adobe. And of course, Adobe is, it's a company that always produces tools for creatives, right? From Photoshop to Illustrator, all that. And Adobe always redefines itself. But of course, recently they shifted to cloud-based kind of subscription model. And this makes them more agile. It allows them to develop features for their products faster than they could when they had, regular desktop applications. Now, of course, not everyone is a fan of their new kind of subscription models. But you know what? They're doing well, and they're going from strength to strength. And creativity, of course, is at the core of it. Now, look at this advert. Now, it is aimed at the creative profession because that's who their target audience is. And that's why they are having this conversation type advertising, where they're talking about the problems that creators face and how their products sort of solve them. Okay, I'm going to pause it because, it's without the sound, you don't really know what's going on. And I will leave a link below where you can actually watch this video on your own time. But those are the three different brands that I wanted to give as examples. We got Honda, we got Lego, and we got Adobe. Of course, Apple, but there are many, many. In fact, what's happening nowadays is that to align with the millennial and even Gen Z kind of generation and buyer types, buyer personas, a lot of the brands are having at least a small percentage of their brand archetype as creator. What does that mean? Just as your target audience can be made up of different archetypes, right? It doesn't mean, I mean, your target audience are not always made up of one archetype. They could be a combination of different archetypes. You know, they could be 30% ruler and 70% hero, or something like that. Just like that, brand archetypes can have more than one archetype, a combination of archetypes. And so depending on your target audience, you could think through and create these percentages. And these days, a lot of the brands are creating or are having a small percentage of their brand persona as a creative archetype, creator archetype. And that's because innovation is important. And to go to blue ocean, being innovative, not just in your product and services, as I said, a few minutes back, but in the way your brand is, in your messaging, in your advertising, in everything. Being a little creative, being a little out of the ordinary is great to have. So think about it. When you're analyzing your archetype, think if having a little bit if you need to be a full creator, that's fine. But if not, then having a little bit of creator maybe is good. But again, as I said, evaluate your situation. All right? Okay, enough. I spent a long time on this one, but I think it's a very important archetype, and of course, I personally love it because that's what we are at Spellbrand. And I myself, as a target audience, I am a creator archetype, and of course, the agency that I run with my partners and with my teams is also a creator archetype. We do have a couple of other little bits and pieces from other archetypes, but creator is the main one. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found value in it. If you have any questions, just leave them below and I will try and answer them. If you're trying to build your brand archetype, then yeah, if you have questions, just ping them to me. All right, till my next archetype, take care.